Everyone remembers O.J. Simpson's classic slow speed car chase as he was chased by police down the interstate in his 1996 white Ford Bronco. While Ford Broncos might not be as popular as, say, a Honda Civic or a Honda Accord, they are still an iconic vehicle that changed the entire face of the automotive industry after their debut in 1966. Ford Sport Utility Vehicle, their first one, the Ford Bronco, was produced in response to the Jeep Willys and the International Scout. The consumer of the specific time area in 1966 wanted a vehicle that was more of a dual purpose vehicle. They wanted something they could take off road in the weekends and go camping with the family and have adventures, while they also wanted something that they could drive to work every day. Now, most people can relate to this as the vast majority of people either drive the all popular Chevrolet Tahoe or CRV, which all stem from the original design of the Ford Bronco. Now, this is a personal subject to me, as my first vehicle was a Ford Bronco, and I got it when I was 16, and I still have it today. It sits in my backyard. Throughout my speech, I will take you through the history of the Ford Bronco, starting with the Bronco 1, or the first generation Bronco, stepping on to the full-size Bronco, and finishing up with how the Bronco, even though it's been discontinued for almost 20 years, still is a very popular and favored vehicle among different communities. I'll begin by telling you the history of the Bronco 1. The early Bronco, also known as the first generation Broncos, were designed in response to International Scout and the Jeep Willys. The demand for a vehicle to be used for weekend adventures was drastically rising as camping and going to the lake and weekend activities out. People wanted to get away from their subdivisions and everything, but most people couldn't afford a vehicle that was strictly for pleasure, so they had to make kind of a crossover. The Ford Bronco was released in 1966. It accompanied a design that could with a removable top, so it could be kind of a convertible, but it could still put the hardtop on and be a very nice in-town vehicle. As stated by Cylindrome's A Brief History of the Ford Bronco, this first generation Bronco was built by Ford in 1966 and through 1977. And those succeeding generations remained in production until 1966. The first generation models are by far the most highly sought after, and they began to see a sharp increase in value as the classic 4x4 market continues to take shape. Now, these early models were made as an affordable thing, as I previously stated, because most people who wanted one couldn't afford a vehicle strictly for pleasure. And now they've first generation Broncos can see upwards of price tags of almost $100,000 if they're in pristine condition. Following the Bronco 1, though, Ford introduced the full-size Bronco. Now, the full-size Bronco was in response to Chevrolet's debut of their competition with the SUV, or the sport utility vehicle, which was the Chevy Blazer. Now, the Chevy Blazer, while it didn't encompass the removable hardtop, it was a much larger vehicle. And Ford decided to take this and kind of run with it and kind of make their own. Cited from Blue Oval Trucks, A History of the Ford Bronco, the Bronco received a redesign in 1980 to coincide with F-Series trucks. Besides cosmetic changes, Bronco also received Ford's new Dana 44 twin traction independent front suspension. They did this independent front suspension as it gave the vehicle a smoother ride, and along with that, they redesigned the engine, transmission, and everything along that lines. They also took the body and enlarged it, and then sat it on their F-150 chassis and frame, giving it a much stronger and durable demeanor. The general design was kept by Ford until its discontinuation in 1966. The classic Bronco gave way to the Ford Explorer and the Ford Excursion, which we still now have today, which in turn were followed by the Ford Escape and things of that nature. Um, though this was the end of the Bronco's production era in 1966, it was most definitely not the end of its legacy. After the production of the Bronco stopped, the popularity of the vehicle never ended. It merely just changed audiences. The Ford Bronco was still a favorite of off-roaders and weekend thrill seekers everywhere. Its independent front suspension, or TTB front axle, as it's commonly known as in the automotive world, has been taken, and while it's still used in Broncos, it is a favorite of desert racers or off-road racers, as it keeps a very smooth ride as the racers race through the desert and over rough terrain. Vehicles with these front suspensions even win these races, and credit it to these suspensions. The Bronco, it's become a favorite of many off-roaders everywhere, as it's fairly easy to put aftermarket parts on, and it's it still retains its power and torque and everything. And though the Bronco popularity is with a select group of people, it is still not lost public eye. As like I previously stated, people still remember and still talk about O.J. Simpson racing down the interstate in his 1966 Ford Bronco. Actually, taken from Trucks on Road, Ford Bronco History, New Trucks 2015 to 2016. Though the Bronco popularity is with a select group of people, it has still not lost public eye. Bronco image jumped after legendary American O.J. Simpson fled from police in his white Bronco in front of television cameras after he was suspected of double murder. You can still watch this video on YouTube, and it's still all over TV as a giant gag. In conclusion, Ford's first sport utility vehicle, the Bronco, paved the way for its modern-day successors such as the Ford Escape, the Honda CR-V, and things of that nature, along with other companies such as Chevy and GMC, to create a sporty vehicle that can be used as a daily driver as well as a weekend warrior. You've now learned a brief history on the history of the early Ford Bronco, its successor, the full-size Bronco, and how it's still in use today and how it's still a very popular vehicle. I've thoroughly enjoyed to speak on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate y'all listening.